Yo, I'm so happy because we get to talk about one of my favorite bands ever, Fugazi. So before I get into the worst to best that we're doing today, I kind of want to give a little context of the band because not a lot of people know Fugazi or you know know why they're so important in rock music and post-hardcore music and punk music and straight edge music and every fucking thing they're a part of. So, Fugazi was a Washington, D.C. band started by singer, songwriter, multi instrumentalist, and co owner of Discord Records, Ian MacKaye. Ian MacKaye was mainly known for bands like Minor Threat back in the day, a band that started the straight edge movement actually with the song Straight Edge, a fantastic song. But this is not about Minor Threat or Embrace, but Embrace is a little closer to Fugazi song. No, this is about what Ian MacKaye did with Fugazi. So, started with Ian, Joe Alley, who was the bassist of Fugazi and actually started doing vocals towards the end of their career in albums like Red Medicine on the song Bayou, or also drummer Colin Sears, but who was only in the band for like a year and was replaced by Brendan Canty of Rites of Spring, which, speaking of Rites of Spring, is probably the first ever emo band. So if you like emo and want to know where that came from, you should listen to Rites of Spring. Amazing band. Excellent band. But also from Rites of Spring was singer, songwriter Guy Picciotto. And Guy Picciotto at first really wanted to join a band. They had no place for him. They ended up finding a place for him kind of like as a hype man to Ian, but he ended up becoming his own songwriter. And for albums like Red Medicine and Repeater, he has more songs than fucking Ian. And they have two totally different songwriting styles. They completely kind of like make the records a little bit more nuanced, and I think add a lot to each Fugazi record that both of them are on, which is every single one. But that's basically a gist of what Fugazi is. You can look up everything they stand for. They're anti, you know, music, freaking music industry stuff that they do, which is fucking awesome. Also, the straight edge stuff where they wouldn't perform at any place that sold beer, alcohol. Like, this band has changed my life a lot. They're the reason why I don't try not to avoid drugs and drinking, because like their music really did change my fucking life. And hopefully if you guys listen to my recommendations, they can influence you too, and hopefully you fuck with these albums that I'm gonna recommend y'all. But yeah, let's get started on my worst to best before I get carried away. Yeah, so the way I'm going to do this worst to best, there's only one EP on here by Fugazi. They have quite a bit of EPs, but there's only one that I think is important that we're going to get to. And we're going to do all studio albums included except for instrumental. That instrumental EP that came out with the movie, or instrumental EP. That to me isn't as important as an album like Red Medicine or an album like On the Kill Taker. So don't care about that. Well, I do, but not in this context. But yeah, let's get started. And hits. Their 1998 record, their last record actually to come out in the 90s, their album in the 90s, I guess. And to be honest, this album isn't that important to Fugazi's discography. Like, if you like it, cool, but this is probably their weirdest album. A lot of people look at Red Medicine as their most, like, experimental album, but I think this album is just as experimental, but a little weird. I mean, the song Break has this weird ass groove. It goes dum 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 dum, which is the one of the weirdest grooves I've heard in like a rock song of this style. Like, you don't really hear that a lot on a post-hardcore song unless you listen to like Mission of Burma. But even then, they don't never pull something that weird, and I don't know really how to describe it. You'd have to listen to it to kind of get it. But there are some great songs on here, even if this game last place. Like No Surprise is kind of beautiful in my opinion. Guy Picciotto really killed it. And also Five Corporations, Ian MacKaye slaughtered that song. It's high energy as hell. And yeah, overall, as much as I don't think this album is a standout in Fugazi's career, I do think it's a great record. I think it's an album you should listen to if you are wanting more Fugazi and you already listened to their most known records. I'd still think you should listen to it if you really want to. Alright, number 6, we have Steady Diet of Nothing. This is the album right after Repeater, and I think this album gets a little underrated because of the fact they came right after Repeater, which is one of the band's most loved, if not their most loved record. I mean, everyone and their mom says that Repeater is their favorite album, but I'll get more to that when we get to that album. But I think with Steady Diet, it's because the band got more experimental. But with each album from this point, they got more experimental. Even with Repeater, they were experimenting more than they did on the stuff they did before Repeater. And I don't know if it's just because so many fans loved Repeater that when they saw the changes that they made on Steady Diet, they're like, no, no, yucky, yucky. But there's some really great songs on here. Like Long Division is one of my favorite Fugazi songs, period. One of the best Ian MacKaye tracks. Also, the song Reclamation. I'm bad at my pronunciations. Another Ian MacKaye track that goes crazy. And also the song Polish, which, holy shit. There's so many bangers on this album. I don't understand why this record kind of gets slept on in the overall, like, know, Fugazi realm, but it really shouldn't. I really wish I put this record higher, but this discography is so watertight, it was hard for me to even come up with a top one. So yeah, that is my number 6 spot, one of my favorite records of that year, actually. Number 5 is a big one for a lot of Fugazi heads, Fugazi nuts. The Argument. And don't get mad because I placed it kind of like in the middle of the discography. Kind of think about it as this band has so many great albums, it's hard to rank them because honestly, I was thinking of putting this in my number 3 or number 2, like really high up. But the thing is that the records are so consistent that I really had to listen to them over and over and over, be like, okay, this is how I'm gonna plan it out. But this album, so amazing. I mean, so many standout tracks, whether it's, Epic Problem or Life in Limb with that hook by Guy Picciotto that is really nice. This is actually Fugazi's most accessible album. This is their most, because it's more of an indie rock album too, and it really did influence the indie rock of the 2000s in a huge fucking way. That's why this record's so great and unique in Fugazi's career. And it's really fucking catchy at some moments too. Also, the song "Cash Out" with that. I love that like kind of guitar bass line, and then also the like they're using the same funky guitar riffs and everything that they would use a Fugazi record, just not slamming you in the face with it, kind of like going more softer about it. And I really do appreciate their approach on this because it made an excellent record that has ideas that Ian MacKaye would still use when he went to the Evens. And yeah, it's a great, amazing, excellent album that I think you should absolutely listen to. And it's definitely one of the best indie rock albums of the 2000s, even if it's not ranking that high on my list. This album is a very interesting one because there's a little bit of backstory behind this one, that it was originally recorded with Steve Albini in Chicago, but the problem was that Steve Albini and the band themselves did not like the way this album turned out. Apparently, it did not sound that great, which is kind of a bummer because like okay, you can find the recordings of that most likely, but like I would love to see what a Fugazi and a Steve Albini album would sound like if like it came out really well. If it came out really well, I know that would be like one of the most influential albums of all time. Not like Fugazi didn't make some of the most influential albums of all time. Obviously, I wouldn't be talking about them if they didn't, but it would be cool to see that happening, especially when Steve Albini produced some of the best albums in this kind of genre, this noise rock and this post-hardcore stuff with his own stuff with Big Black, or even with Nirvana's In Euro, and he even produced Yeast by Joanna Newsom, which sounds nothing like this because that's a harp singer-songwriter album, but it's one of my favorite records of the 2000s. One of my favorite records of the 2000s like ever. So it's kind of funny to think that this guy had a lot of range when it came to producing stuff and making it sound fucking excellent. Unfortunately, he couldn't do that with Fugazi because that would have been fucking killer. But even with Fugazi's recording of it, you still get a lot of great songs like "Returning the Screw," which the first time I heard the song, I was mind blown. And it's not just that. There's also a Smallpox Champ, which is a Guy Pachota song. I think goes fucking insane. Um, Fawcett Squared with these weird jagged guitar lines that I think are great. And then it spits to Ian MacKaye just doing what Ian MacKaye does best. And also, the song Great Cop to me is just great. That's why it's called Great Cop. Because if the song was bad, it would have been called Bad Cop. That was corny as fuck. I'm still keeping on the video though because it is like 12 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, and on the Kill Taker, I think to me is excellent Fugazi record and one of my favorite albums in their discography, and one that should be listened to abso-fucking-lutely. The reason why I picked this EP is because it has their most iconic songs. No, I didn't pick 13 songs because I don't know. I had no reason to pick this over 13 songs. I just kind of felt like it. But so with this EP, it starts off with the song Waiting Room, which you know, I know, we all know. If you know a little bit about punk rock music, you know this song. It's iconic. It's everywhere. It's great. It's amazing. Yeah, we don't need to talk about it. But one song I think we do need to talk about, and is an underrated song on this EP, is Give Me the Cure. One of the best Fugazi songs ever. It's a Guy Pachota song, or lyrics about like, I never thought about dying before. I never thought under dying. And like, it's great song, great subject matter, great vocals. Because this is when Fugazi was first getting started, but they kind of started off with a blast. Because damn, they were not playing around. They were not fucking around when they dropped this. Now, this is where I had the tough situation because this album right here, this amazing post-hardcore album, was a personal favorite of mine for a while. This was a 10 out of 10 record for me. I don't know if it still is. Probably not because it's not even in my number one spot. Who knows? It may change back because these two albums kind of fluctuate. But I think that where I have them right now, it's pretty safe. Like, I think it's gonna stay for a while. But I think with Repeater, the reason why I love it so much is because it is Fugazi's first album, and they did start it off with such an amazing crop of songs. This did come a couple years after the Fugazi EP, because the Fugazi EP released in '88, and this album released in 1990. But I think what this album kind of does is it kind of takes everything that Fugazi's done and kind of adds a little bit more to it. There's a little bit more like grooviness, and like you hear a little bit more of those dub influences and stuff, and it sounds really fucking amazing. And you know, overall, when it comes to the grand scheme of Fugazi, there's some of the most iconic songs I hear, like Blueprint, um, one of the best slow burners of their career. But I think my personal favorite slow burner of this album, probably of their whole career, is the song "Shut the Door," which is an Ian MacKaye track, amazing track. One of my top favorite Fugazi songs ever, point blank period. I would recommend you listen to it if you have not heard the band. Listen to the song Blueprint too, because I think those songs would make the band easier to get into, honestly. And overall, Repeater is an amazing album. Song after song, moment after moment, there's greatness after greatness. Maybe there are some songs here and there I don't care for how they progress, like the song Greed, which is like, you want everything, you need you everything, which like is probably the only reason why this isn't at number one, because everything on here, I'm telling you, perfectly produced, perfectly crafted. The band was really careful when making this album. But it did not get my number one. I don't need a fucking script to talk about Red Medicine. Let's talk about this amazing, excellent, mind-blowing 1995 record by the band Fugazi. Holy shit. I'm telling you, this album is mind-blowing when it comes to how much the band evolved from when we get to this point. Because this is their fourth record. This came after In on the Kill Taker, like 2 years after In on the Kill Taker. And this album really improved on all the experimental shit that they were doing. Like, holy shit. First off, the album starts off with the song Do You Like Me? Starts off with this noise intro that grinds in your ears like. It's so loud and compressed. I would recommend listening to this album on headphones because this is also Fugazi's best produced album. Like, all I said about Repeater being one of their, like, best produced, but the thing is, when it comes to albums from here, from their first couple albums, they were all recorded, like, playing them, like, this is like playing them and recording them at the same time. This is their first. Oh, that kind of sounds stupid, but this is their first album in a studio and not recording it live, basically. And you can really tell on how great the production is. Get a nice pair of headphones and listen to this fucking album. Trust me, you will be mind blown on the sounds that this band pulls. A lot of the stuff on here is maybe a little bit weird in comparison. Kind of reminds me of like something you'll get off of like Mission of Burma versus, like, especially the song Birthday Pony. But like, just song after song, it's amazing. I mean, some of my favorite songs I hear, Target. I love the guitar part riff that goes. Also, it's one of my favorite songs to play on guitar ever. I mean, it's probably my favorite song to play on guitar. Also, the song Long Distance Runner, which is, oh my god, and then the song Bed for Scraping. There's one moment on that song where Ian MacKaye just screams "Go" off the top of his lungs, and it's like, to me, such ear candy. Holy shit! And the band does so much like new ground on here when it comes to the psychedelic influences by Bayou, which was actually sung by Joe Alley, which is the only song on this album that's sung by Joe Alley. But he kind of became more of put more in a singing role in the later part of the band, and I really think it worked out, especially on this song, because holy shit. And it's also the longest song on this album. You know, just track after track. I'm looking at the track list right now. There is not a song that I think is bad. I mean, there's Forensic Scene, there's Latest Disgrace, there's, oh my god, there's Felt Destroyed. There is, listen to Felt Destroyed. There's a moment where Guy Picciotto just has some of the best singing you will hear on any Fugazi song moment. Like, there's this one part of this song Felt Destroyed where you will hear the best singing you will hear on any Fugazi song. Yeah, this is my number one without a thought in my head, and it's not because this fucking album came out on the day of my birthday. Oh, you guys both born on June 12th, so this is your favorite because of bias. No, fuck you. I didn't even fucking know that until like a couple days ago. And the only issue I have with the album is the album cover, because I don't like this bottom part. I know people are gonna be like, "Oh, upside down slant, upside down slant." Lose your fucking virginity for once, please. I I can't, because I was talking shit about that too, but like, no, this album is great, full and throughout. If you're gonna listen to an album here, I would listen to this one, but I would say be prepared, because this is probably the band's most experimental, most out there album, in my opinion. And obviously, if you saw my Fugazi kind of like, bracket, you would have known this would have gotten number one, because I said firmly that this is my favorite Fugazi record and one of my favorite post-hardcore records ever, and one of my favorite rock albums of the 90s. And yeah, to end it off there, Red Medicine is my favorite Fugazi album, and I'm pretty sure y'all already knew that before clicking on this video if you knew me. And yeah, Fugazi, one of the best bands of all time. Red Medicine, one of the best rock albums of all time. Ian MacKaye, Guy Picciotto, Joe Alley, fucking Bryn Canty, one of the best quartets in rock history. And yeah, I will see y'all in the next video. I know this was a long ass one, but hey, I promised y'all the video was gonna come out. I fucking did it. And yeah, see y'all in the next video.